Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Diane Allen, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action.
Being a good storyteller or great storyteller with Selena Anduze. I have a great guest for us today. Oh my God, she is a blast. And you've probably seen her or at least heard her voice on Disney+. We have the actress with us, Selena Anduze, who hails from St. Croix. And I love the Virgin Islands. And thank you so much for coming on the show with us today and bringing your sparkle and your enthusiasm for one of my favorite topics, storytelling.
Thank you so much for having me to talk about my favorite topic and my passion in life, which is storytelling.
Oh, it's so perfect. And I know that now you're, a little north of Atlanta and we're both talking before the show about being landlocked because we're water people. But I also think that the flow of the water in our soul is kind of like how that creativity moves through. And so I think it's still there with us. So I have a question for you, a couple questions for you leading into the storytelling piece. I know that you've been in the entertainment world since you were pretty young. And I'd love to know how all that got started. Like you were I think 7, I think is what I read. But how did that get started? Like not too many 7-year-olds go, okay, well, I'm going to go be an actress. So, I'm going to go be an entertainer. So how did that work?
Well, interestingly enough, I come from a family that is kind of a secret artists all at heart, but they are, like politicians and doctors and educators and lawyers. And when I was really little, my older brother, he and I were thick as thieves, and we would create our own little musicals and our own little plays. And he's about 1.5 years older than me. And so when I was about 3 or 4 and he was about 6 years old, 5 or 6, he would take something that we saw off a cartoon and he'd be like, let's go act it out for mom and dad. And we had these big curtains that separated the kids' playroom from the living room. And voila, now we have a theater because we have these curtains. And so we kind of just had a blast. Just, we were TV kids of, the latchkey kids of the 80s. And we would watch something and be so inspired to go act it out, whether it was Fraggle Rock or the Star Wars or what have you. And my poor parents, we would, they'd work all day and then we'd sit them down and they would be forced to watch these little kids. Who knows what our scripts were about? They were probably ridiculous, but we had such imagination and we turned anything into a toy, a weapon or a daisy or, what have you. And my parents recognized that kind of imagination is so healthy to water in children. Of course, they were secretly hoping I would become a scientist and a doctor, and my brother as well. And boy, did we disappoint them because my brother is a well-known musician and I'm a well-known actress. So we had our own plans from a very young age.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. I love it. And I think it's fun that your brother went into music and you're in acting, and it really did start back then. And your parents watered your creativity and they got exactly what they watered. I mean, it's no surprise.
They did. I don't think they realized what they were in for, but yes.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. I love it. So talk to us a little bit about the journey from starting acting that young and how it has led you to where you are now. Give us a little cliff note. How did that work? Because you were in the Virgin Islands and so you had to get to the US.
Right.
And then how did all that work? Because now, and you're working with Disney. So.
Right. So it's really difficult when you are, on an island that not many people even know about to have a career in such a hard industry to begin with. And at a very young age, I knew it was what I wanted. I've known it probably since I came out of the womb. And I would just pester the crap out of my parents. And once I got a taste of being on stage, at 7 years old, starring in Annie at the only like real amphitheater on the island, and having such big audiences night after night. I was hooked. And so after 2 years of me wearing down my parents, they recognized that they were going to have to talk to somebody professional who knew what they were doing. And my mom got me connected with a modeling agency. And they happened to have somebody on the island who would go between the three Virgin Islands, and train the young girls. And it just so happened that in my first year modeling, I was also singing and dancing, and they invited me to enter into this competition and amongst the islands. And in that competition, I ended up winning. And then I headed to New York. Oh my gosh, whole new ball game. So I was actually the youngest talent, or youngest performing artist to ever go to the New York this specific talent competition. And I won as Miss U.S. Virgin Islands at 9 years old.
I love it.
And so after that, I was seen by talent scouts, immediately signed by an agency. They wanted to put me on the Cosby Show and what have you. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to live in the United States. We're going home. Like, what have we done here? We've created a monster. She doesn't want to leave New York. And so my mom said, you got one summer. That's it. And she was gracious enough to spend her whole summer in New York with me, dragging me around. Back then we didn't have cell phones. We'd get a call or something on the beeper, and she'd drag me all over Manhattan to different offices. And I ended up doing commercials and singing and dancing my little heart out in classes, and trying to audition for Broadway. You name it, I went for it. And then at the end of the summer, my mom was like, time's up, we're going home. And that just broke my little heart to so many pieces. And so I went home. And then I feel like my whole life has been trying to get back to that, trying to get back to that feeling, always chasing my creative bliss that I had that one summer in New York.
Wow, that was cool. So was that a big culture shock from St. Croix to New York? Like,
oh my goodness.
That
yes.
Just is like, whoa.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a little, big curly haired, sunburned kid who ran around barefoot and hated shoes, to going to Manhattan where everything had to be polished and I had to be dressed, well every day for every audition, and my hair had to be pressed and I had to wear shoes that I couldn't walk in. And it was quite a culture shock. And then, just seeing so many people and the vibrations of a city versus being on an island where everything's slow paced and warm. It was really, really bizarre. But I have to say, I loved it. I was so curious. I was obsessed with bodegas, particularly the ones in Chinatown. I would ask my mom, like, oh, they have the best food. Let's go down to a bodega in Chinatown. And that's kind of how we lived. We'd go on our auditions all day long. And then my mom would take me to our favorite little bodega to get dinner. And we'd go home and we'd watch The Muppet Show. Because that was my show back then.
Oh, that was a great show. That was so perfect. I love it. I love it. And so I love that from the very beginning, your family supported this big vision, this dream, your heart going after it. And yet they also put parameters on it, right? But they supported you.
Yes.
And so how has that early support affected you through this time? Like, how does it even affect you today, knowing that you were supported that strongly when you were young?
For what it was at the time. And I am so grateful because they did nurture what was something that I hope they saw inherently was a part of me, part of my soul, part of my calling. And even though they had put parameters on it, I am so appreciative that they at least heard what I needed and heard what I wanted, so that I could take the reins from there and keep on watering myself. That's ultimately what I've done in my film and TV career, is I've really learned how to rely on that foundation that they helped me build and then water myself for it. So I can just say I have so much gratitude for being a latchkey kid who was sat in front of the TV and allowed to keep them up at night doing my little performances with the living room curtains.
I love it. I could just see you doing that. It's like I have the image. I have the image.
It was great. I'm sure there's some videos of it somewhere out there.
Yeah. Oh, don't
go looking for it, anybody, please.
That will be even more fun. So I want to talk a little too about storytelling, because I think storytelling is so vital to all of it. And you are an artist at storytelling. And so talk a little bit about how storytelling feeds your soul. Like how does that work for you from the inside out?
Yes. Ultimately, I feel like it is the most spectacular way that we as human beings communicate. It's how we connect. To me, it's really how you can change the heart, mind, and soul of someone who you feel is so alien to you and so different. We've had all this political turmoil going on, different sides of the aisle. And if we rely on storytelling to actually listen to each other, I feel like we'd end up recognizing that we're all human and we're all connected. And so my passion has always been there for using storytelling as my way to really connect to other people. I always felt like I was an old soul way beyond my years. I never quite fit in as a kid. I didn't fit in my family. I'm definitely the black sheep. And I always had that, carrying that with me of, I don't fit in. But what I did have was my passion to tell stories. And in doing so, I was able to captivate the attention of others, not in an attention-seeking way, but more in a, hey, this is something I would love to share. Mm-hmm. I'd love for you to listen and then tell me what you think. And it automatically creates this bridge between people, is what I've noticed. And I don't feel like that has an age limit. I don't feel like it has a race limit, whether, if someone is disabled with, let's say they couldn't see you or they couldn't hear you. There's always ways to tell stories as human beings.
Right. And storytelling is like the oldest art form, right? Like,
yes.
And that's how information's transferred generation to generation. And in all the different ways, like the stories around campfires and the stories, in the family car and the vacation, or the stories,
exactly.
They're everywhere. And it's part of who we are. And it's funny when you said, well, funny, not funny, haha, but interesting, I guess is a better word. When you said that you were an old soul and didn't really fit in, all the people that I work with, including me, we're all we call ourselves interrupters. Like we're the black sheeps of our family, because we came in with a soul calling to interrupt whatever the intergenerational trance was before us.
Yes.
And so we're doing a mighty service by stepping into who we are as storytellers, as that authentic being who's saying, hold on a minute here, that this intergenerational trauma, trance, whatever, and I'm taking a stand.
I love that. And I, when I first went into TV and film, I was immediately told, you're too old. You're too old to be entering this right now. Are you Hispanic or are you black? No one's going to really know. So no one's going to want to hire you, because you almost have to pick something that you are. And I said no to all of it. I said, there's no age limit on being a storyteller. There's no height limit. There is certainly no race limit. And so I've fought really hard. I'm on the local SAG board for Atlanta, and I'm also on a diversity committee. And that goes for everything. Why would it be if someone is in a wheelchair, they cannot be a director? That's false. We are all capable of telling stories, and there should be no limitations to that. So I do fight very, very hard for it, as well as for my own self. I'm constantly having to prove, hey, look, I can actually do this. And if you're not here to aid this kind of progression for us, which is so incredibly crucial on TV, since it's a visual medium, people need to see themselves out there. And you don't see many West Indian American actors and actresses, especially ones my kind of mix. You'll see, everyone likes to be in these boxes, and I'm so out of the box for them. And so I feel like it's very much my duty to be out there and to let people see, hey, she can play a doctor. She doesn't have to play a maid, or she can play anything. And that's really, really important to me as I do this work.
Right. I think that's really important too, because I remember when being down in St. Thomas for quite some time, and there are on the whole world, there's all these stereotypes because I'm 4'11" and I'm blonde and I have blue eyes.
Yeah.
And so people think therefore that I guess I don't have any brain cells or something. I don't know. I have gotten so many different blonde jokes and my dark haired friends go, I had a blonde moment. I said, watch it.
Yeah.
Things like that. And, I still laugh, but it's not funny.
It's not funny.
It's not funny underneath it because it just shows that there's such pervasive cultural ignorance.
Yes.
And I remember when my brother first moved to St. Thomas, you're going to love this story. We're from Florida and he went down there to open a sail loft and she wasn't there very long. And we were having a conversation and he said, it's so different there, different down here. I go, why? He goes, because when you go into the grocery stores, you say good day to everybody. You say hello to everybody. And where in Florida, you didn't do that. You didn't dare, Right. But in the islands, you acknowledged everybody and you said good day and all that, or they weren't even going to talk to you until you acknowledged them. And
right.
I said, but that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And he loved it. And then when he came back, I lived there for a long time. And when he came back to the US, he goes, oh, this is all wrong. Like he so totally loved having that different kind of connection.
Yes.
And there is beauty in that culture. And
yes,
I think anyway. And so I think there's beauty in all culture. But I love the island culture. I can't help it. I just do. It's in my blood somewhere. So when you think about your acting career and you're a woman, you are representing in a powerful way diversity in all of its different ways.
Right.
Lots of different angles, which I think is so important and valuable.
Yes.
And so in all of that, what do you do to take care of you? Because this mission that you're on is a mighty one. Plus, you've got to add all your work, all of your roles and all the work you're doing for your craft. Those are two big callings. And so what do you do to take care of Selena?
That is a fantastic question. Sorry, you see my dog's walking around behind me.
Yeah, my dog is sleeping.
So there's that. I have my dogs that I go on walks with every single day. I have to be in nature. I like to do grounding where you touch the earth barefoot. That's something that's really important to me because it helps me get back to just feeling connected. When you're an emotional athlete like I am, it's very easy to get lost in almost in the hurricane of the emotions that we are required to master. And sometimes you get a little carried away. If I'm researching and I'm trying to really pinpoint how to be a voice for a specific emotion and a specific role so that whoever watches it feels like I told their story and that I understood it. It can be hard to get back from that. So for me, I do a lot of grounding. I love to swim. I'm a water baby. I prefer the ocean, but we don't have ocean here. For me, it's nature. And for me, I work with different dog rescues and it's just being in harmony with other things. And it may be don't talk to anybody for 3 days and just go hang out with the birds. I have an obscene amount of birds in my backyard. They all know I'm the place to go to for all my bird feeders. It's a little embarrassing, but that's how I reconnect and that's how I self-heal.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think nature is the most healing of all. And when I moved up here to North Carolina, when I moved up last spring, and I went in my backyard the first day, and there were these little chipmunks, and I'd not seen chipmunks live, and they were hopping around, and I'm like, oh my gosh, little chipmunk! And I was like a little kid at Disney, like, oh my god, look! And it's like I'm so connected to nature, especially when it's new.
Yes.
As well as the things that are so familiar to me. I'm like, wow, this is like really fun,
Yeah.
Like it brings us back to earth and grounds us. And I think that when we're gifted, we need to be grounded and we need to really work.
Absolutely.
Being more grounded. So how often or how do you connect with your intuition in your work?
It's not a matter of a formula for how. I think it's something that I just naturally have always had. Mm-hmm. And it could be because I'm an empath. And so when I read something or when I connect to watching something, I feel it so profoundly. And I automatically know how to give it a voice. And then if it's something that I am not as familiar with, but I understand, that's when I try to craft that voice so that I'm making sure I do it justice. So I was also a professor for a while. I taught anatomy and physiology at vocational schools. And I love science. I know it's strange. You think of a creative and then some of us are right-brained and left-brained. For me, science is a whole nother story to tell. I'd be acting out the red blood cells journey through the body. First it goes here to the spleen and then it's doing so-and-so. And I'd give them names and being completely silly. And then everyone's acing the test. So for me, it's always finding that it's having the intuition to find what makes a story or any kind of information the most absorbable by another human being. That's what I've always been nurturing.
Oh, my word. I'm a science geek, too.
Yes.
I'm sitting here going, oh, my.
I love it. I love it.
I have had people who've said to me that they don't cross over creativity and science, and I argue that point. And so now I have yet one more person.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like they're so beautifully married, science and creativity. To me, they're in the same, arena. So
yes,
they complement each other.
I agree with you. And I also think that's part of like cultural bias and cultural judgment that people don't realize they've siloed themselves into these belief systems that aren't necessarily accurate.
Exactly.
And we have to be willing to challenge those belief systems that aren't necessarily accurate in order to really have a rich, full life and really bring our own purpose and mission to fruition.
Yes.
And
yes.
And I'm just loving having this conversation with you. And so, okay. So now in every story, there's like the protagonist and there's all the lessons and there's a curve, and the hero's journey and all of those things. And so one of the things I love to do is I love to read biographies or learn about people in some way through biographical and autobiographical means. And I love to watch the like threads that go through all different kinds of stories. And one of the threads that I find fascinating, and I would love to hear what you think about it, is the thread of feeling different than or not necessarily understood, or like almost like I don't really belong on this earth. I'm not even really sure why I'm here, like kind of almost like a disconnection, even though the person wants to be connected and they have to work to be grounded. And I see that in a lot of stories displayed in different ways, but that's the kind of feel I get. And I'm wondering what you think about that. Is that something that resonates with you? And if so?
Absolutely. I feel like we really see a lot of this actually right now. I would say even over the last decade, we've seen an increase in the underdog story, or even, whether you watch Marvel or not, it's very, those are our big blockbuster superhero films. But what's the best part of those superhero films are, in my opinion, is the villain. That's the most well-crafted because they're the underdog. They're the one who felt different and why they did the things that they did, even though society may deem it wrong. They were seeking justice, or they were seeking to be understood. And it's that shutdown of no longer paying attention to the one that needed the village. It's the whole, a child will burn down the village just to feel its warmth if it's not heard. And I feel very much so that our TV and film is starting to reflect that very thing that we're experiencing in society. I identify with that very personally, because I know for me, being the black sheep of my family, then culturally moving to the United States, being an island girl who, I had a thick accent. I actually stopped speaking for several months when I first moved to Atlanta because I was made fun of so mercilessly. And then I learned, okay, I'm going to learn how to speak in perfect American, accent. And I did. And it's just amazing the lengths that the person who is misunderstood will go to just to be accepted in some way, to have connection. Because really that's what it's about. And then when we lose somebody who is so disconnected, I think that's our next question to really start addressing, because I feel that leads to so much violence that we're seeing. The disconnected group maybe I don't really go with the whole lone wolf, but it's the disconnection that we keep on seeing, and we keep on losing people too.
Yeah, I think that sense of belonging and connection is part of our DNA. It's part of our inherent neurology.
Yes.
Our brains seek it, our biology seeks it. And so when you get disconnected to a certain point, that fissure gets so wide that we're losing those. They're like falling off the cliff, those people, in whatever different ways.
Exactly.
It's time that people start waking up and doing something about that.
Yes.
And quite frankly, an aside, I think the West Indian accent is just beautiful.
Thank you.
and it's really fun because when I go in stores or places with friends of mine who don't know what the West Indian accent is, and I meet people and I hear it, I go, oh, and I pretty much can know what island.
You feel like you're home.
And I'm like, oh,
yes.
And they're like looking at me funny, and I'm like, you don't understand. There is beauty in that.
Yes, it's you get back to the connection of it from being in St. Thomas. Yeah,
and so it's just a beautiful thing. And so I just thought I'd let you know that. And you make a good point. People will go to any lengths to belong and feel connected. Yes. And the villains in the stories go to any lengths that look villain.
Right.
They're just trying to be heard and understood and get along in the world somehow, some way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what's it like being a Disney character?
It is fantastic. Disney's been very good to me. I'm actually really, really proud to be a part of the Disney family because I feel like they are doing such a good job with bringing in more cultural diversity, more inclusion, both in front of and behind the camera. And they're doing everything that they can to be on the right side of history. So it's really exciting to be a part of that because for me as a storyteller and as a visual storyteller, I feel like it's like I have a sense of duty to make sure that I'm also being seen in a way that is not stereotypical. I'm being seen in a way that is positive and that is more of the norm and that is culturally educational to the rest of the world. So me being a Virgin Islander who's transplanted to Georgia, I'm an island girl with a Southern swirl, and I don't ever hide that about myself. I used to, and then I said, no, this is who I am. And for casting, I always let them know this is who I am. And Disney embraced it wholeheartedly. And, I'm so proud to be a part of a giant that does that. And what they're doing right now with all of their stories is really something special.
Oh, that is so beautiful. So if you're listening to what Selena Anduze is talking about, you can check the show notes out for more of her biography and how to follow her on Instagram and everywhere. And of course, you can find her on Disney Plus because that's where she is. And we're going to keep going, but I just want to tell you that this conversation is very, very important and it's got me goosebumps. And for somebody as really talented as you are to spend time with us, sharing with all of us, me and all my listeners, this valuable information to help people really live from their heart is such a huge gift. And thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me share this with you.
So you're also, an educator, right? And you teach acting and you're a storyteller. You do all these really amazing, in our gifted world, we call it being a multi-potentialite.
Yes.
You can do just lots of things and love them all. And so how do you handle stress?
Oh my gosh, that is a fantastic question. Without eating too much chocolate because I am on TV and I have to maintain a certain look.
Right.
How do I maintain stress? Okay, well, I do also watch obscene amounts of television, and I always write it off and say, well, it's my job. No, it's not. I mean, part of it's my job, but I kind of like to get lost in stories. I read books. I listen to music. I listen to podcasts. Whenever I'm really stressed out, I try to kind of escape or let myself completely get lost for a little while and then go find myself again. So for example, I was watching this crazy show. It came out years ago, but I was watching this, it's called Penny Dreadful. And I was so taken in with Rory Kinnear. He was playing Frankenstein's monster and he had adopted the name John Clare after the poet. And I was just so obsessed with what was happening in the show that I binge watched the whole show. And then after that, I ended up looking him up and I'm like, what else has this man done? And then it brought me back to myself because I kept questioning, why was I so attached to this character?
Right.
He's not the only one who did a beautiful job, but why him? And I recognized, oh, wait, it's that story that resonates with me again. It's the person who didn't deserve to be cast out from the castle, and then did everything in his power to just have connection, including begging the man who made him to create him a mate, make the bride of Frankenstein's monster. Just give me someone, just give me something to live for, since he realized he was immortal. And I was just, so that's what I mean. I'll find something and get lost in it and then bring it back to me. Like, oh, how does this make me understand myself better so that I'm a better storyteller, or so that I'm able to connect with someone that I might meet who needs that from me as well. And I can extend that fire or extend that olive branch or extend that hug, whatever they might need in that moment.
Right. And so
True story.
And so the connection and the storytelling and all of its different venues is a soul thing for you. It's not simply your work. It's not just your work. It's like your work is a vocation that comes from that calling within your soul.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I mentor actors and coach them, I tell them, this is the toughest industry in the world. And if you're getting into it to be famous, that's a whole different thing. It's going to be really hard for someone to be successful if they're just chasing fame. And I kind of sit them down and have that heart to heart. And I say, look, you need to be chasing your passion for storytelling. It's got to be, where do I fit? What is my dharma? How do I fit the village? What is my purpose in who I'm supposed to be the best at telling a certain story so the whole village of humanity survives? For me, I very lovingly refer to, there was this man named Sam Christensen, who was my mentor, and he passed away about 2 years ago. But he taught me the whole concept of storytelling and dharma. And he said, Selena, you're the soft wooden hammer. You are the one we all look to, who's going to tell it to us straight, but with the most heart and with the most empathy. You will knock us over the head with it, but you'll do it gracefully and with softness. And I was like, soft wooden hammer? I don't know what you're talking about. That's awful. And then he was like, oh, honey, yes, you are. And I'm so grateful for him for showing that to me. And I don't have any desire really for fame. I just want to work, and I just want to be telling the stories that need to be told. And if that takes me to a more visible journey, then wonderful. If it doesn't, then I hope at least it touches exactly who it's supposed to touch.
Right. Yeah, that's trusting that whole out picturing. See, one of my first mentor told me I was like a velvet sledgehammer, that I just knocked people over the head with the truth, and they loved it because of the velvet.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's basically the same thing.
Oh my God,
that's so fantastic.
It's hysterical. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh, this is cracking me up. It's cracking me up. Okay, so I have another random question that I'm just very curious about, because you are from the islands and you have traveled a lot and everything. And I'd love to know what the most memorable food is you've ever eaten.
My goodness, I will tell you, sugar apples. I miss and love sugar apples. So in St. Croix, I believe it's pretty much just the Virgin Islands have the specific type of sugar apple. Have you ever had one?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's my favorite fruit, and it's impossible to find it in the U.S. At least here in Atlanta, it's impossible to find. But I remember as a kid, we had this big, gorgeous sugar apple tree, and I used to climb it and go and pluck the sugar apples. And it was the only tree that my dad wouldn't yell at me for climbing too high, and because he knew that I would be very careful in the sugar apple tree. Because I just had to get the sugar apples and bring them down to safety. So that's my favorite island food. That's my most nostalgic island food, is really our local fruits. And we also have, papayas and mangoes to die for. So I'm definitely a tropical fruit girl.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. So there's people out here listening to you that are wanting to follow their heart's desire and maybe feel a little bit of fear or trepidation, or not sure if they should say yes, or they're just beginning. And And when you think about people in that beginning stage or that thinking about beginning stage, do you have any words of advice or encouragement or something that you would share maybe to inspire to it's okay to take the next step?
Yes. I would love to say to those who just keep having that nagging little question about following their dream or following their passion, that it's going to hit you eventually. And if you answer it now, it won't be the big ton of bricks that's going to drop on you later in your life. Your passion will always find you. So either you start listening to it now when it's just a quiet voice, or you'll have a much bigger voice to answer to later on. And then you'll also, usually along with those louder voices later on, comes a loud negative voice telling you, oh, no, it's the society voice. You're too old to do it now, or you're too heavy to do it now. And those voices aren't real. Those voices are meant to keep you in your bubble. And when we stay in a bubble, we don't grow. And your voice of passion is meant to, it's your whole reason for being here. It's meant to get you growing. And no one wants to be in a stagnant pond. So let your water flow, let your passions grow, and listen to your inner voice. Just go for it.
Beautiful.
You don't have anything to lose.
Right. Yes, ditto. So if you just heard what Selena just said, you can replay it over and over and over again until it gets in. That's the beauty of a podcast, folks.
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk about being an empath for a moment, shall we?
Sure.
Because a lot of gifted people are very sensitive. There's the highly sensitive group, and there's the empaths and the intuition. And I have coined a new phrase called intense sensitivities, which are people who are intuitive plus gifted. And so there's a spiritual giftedness like the empath, intuitive, and gifted, which is, have the overexcitabilities of gifted people. So I'm interested in how you being an empath and an old soul, how that is impacted working in an industry that doesn't necessarily care about empaths and it's not necessarily emotionally, congruent that way. It's a very hard industry. And so how do you do that?
With a lot of skill, to be honest. I had to learn boundaries. I had to learn how to protect my energy, protect my body, basically you have to build this barrier, but you also have to be vulnerable. It sounds like a catch-22 when you are an actor, but in the vulnerability, you usually find another scene partner, you find someone else who is doing the exact same thing. And when that happens, it's magic because the two of you have locked in on each other. You're sharing all of this art. You're sharing the passion. You're sharing the story. And everything else on set is tuned out. All the other people they just disappear because what's happened is you've learned how to really hone how to create a fortress around only that energy and protect it. And then, when they yell cut, you have to bring the drawbridge back up and allow the rest of the world, to crowd you all over again. So it becomes a muscle that you're constantly oiling and constantly, working out. Right. And for a lot of people who are highly sensitive and who are also empaths like I am, that can be exhausting. So, it's a beautiful thing that as a working actor, we actually have time between projects to decompress and to kind of recharge. And, I don't know about other empaths, but for me, I have to be alone. I need dead silent. I'll be on set for 14 hours a day, and then I'll go home and I will just be in complete silence. And that is part of my recharge. Yeah, it's a very difficult task to undertake. But one I feel I must do, acting's not something I have to do. It's just something let me rephrase that. Acting isn't something that I just want to go out and do it. It's something that I have to do. I can't imagine living without storytelling. So I go through the hardship of all of the industry stress, all of the business of acting, where they don't care if you're an empath or not, because it's about money. It's a business first. And I learned how to maneuver through that so that I can do what I have to do as a storyteller.
Right. Because what you have to do as a storyteller is your soul's calling.
Yes.
And if you try to ignore it or stump it or stop it, it just comes through louder later, like you said
exactly.
already. So you're answering that soul calling in an industry that doesn't really care about it. So you have to get those good boundaries and create a way to have them work together, which is a really smart thing to do.
Thank you. And honestly, I that's the way you survive and have longevity, career longevity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It sure is. And there's a lot of that fun stuff. So when you look forward 5 years, 10 years into your future and your life in general, what do you see?
I see bigger, juicier, relevant parts where I am telling stories that I'm constantly learning all of these new shades of an emotion. We understand what happy is, we understand what anger is, but rage is a little bit different than just anger. So I'm really, really excited about everything I have ahead of me that I know is coming, where I get to really polish all of these beautiful little notes in between of the 6 core emotions of human beings, and get to deliver them in different characters and have people really connect to them as I age, hopefully gracefully, so that people of different generations, as I move into a new generation, that they could connect with me, or a new age set that they can connect with me. And younger folks can be like, oh, wow, when I'm her age, I want to do that kind of thing. So I'm really excited. And I hope, for me, I know I'll be doing this till the day I croak. So whatever comes. And if it's not going to be on screen, it'll be on stage, or it would be in workshops, helping people cultivate their own voices, their own master storyteller, and finding what lane to travel in as a master storyteller, so that everything's progressing in life and not remaining stagnant.
Oh, that's beautiful. How do you see your work impacting humanity, our culture?
I really hope that I can be a character out there, or an actress out there, that people feel, I got it. Oh, she gets it. I understand. She understands it entirely, how I felt when I went through that, because that's the whole point of storytelling. And for me, I feel more connected to the world when I can cultivate exactly that, where I can understand it and then maybe put it into words that you weren't able to express it in, so that you can say, oh, well, Selena got it. So you just go watch that movie and you'll know exactly what I meant. Or just go watch that TV show, because that character, that's me. And being able to have that, it's such a gift, profound responsibility. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's totally beautiful. Now, but we're getting close to the end, because you've given us so much of your time so generously. But is there anything that you've been wanting to share about that was on your heart to share that I haven't asked about or brought up yet? Because there's so many fascinating things, we could go on for days. Is there something that your heart wants to say?
Well, I would just say if you can take one day this week to go out there and just either people watch or listen in, maybe even eavesdrop, feel a little bit naughty about it, and eavesdrop on a conversation from people that you would have no connection to, complete strangers, and make sure you're wearing your mask so that you're safe, but go and eavesdrop on strangers, and then you'll see that they're really not so different, and that there is connection, and that there is love, and that we are actually all a part of humanity's story.
Yes, that we are all connected. We're all one.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally true. Excellent. Beautiful. All right. So I have one final question for you. You ready?
Yes. Go for it.
We're going to create a billboard that the entire world is going to see with your message on it. What's that message on that billboard?
Oh, wow. That's one heck of a question. I love it. Boy, what would I want to say? There's no such thing as alien. There's only empathic resonance. Look it up and embrace it.
Perfect. Perfect. When I was in high school, I was sure I was an alien because nobody got it.
Yeah. No.
Yep.
No such thing as aliens.
That's perfect. Well, everybody, you've heard an amazing conversation with myself and Selena Anduze. I tell you, she's something. You're something. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to remind everybody that Selena's information's in the show notes. Follow her on Instagram. Go hunt her down. Follow her work. And give her some love on Instagram. Let her know you heard her here on Someone Gets Me. So thank you, Selena, for being on the show with me today and sharing so openly and authentically and personally, because I really think that what you've had to share not only is impactful and important, but inspiring for those people who secretly, or for all of us, but especially the people who aren't really sure what to do. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and let your beautiful light shine. And until the next episode of Someone Gets Me.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.